welcome to Power Fridays Live, the channel that aims to make a difference in the world through transformation, spiritual growth, and for entrepreneurs. Our vision is to empower individuals to live their lives with purpose and to make a positive impact on the world. We believe that power and purpose are the driving forces behind success and fulfillment in both personal and professional life. Through our broadcast, we discuss business strategies and techniques that can help entrepreneurs achieve their goals and take their business to the next level. We believe that through sharing knowledge and experience, we can empower each other to succeed and make a difference in the world. Now here's our host, Janelle Pulley.
Hello, good evening. Welcome to Power Fridays Live. And I'm so excited to have with me this evening as we begin the Legacy of Love series here this month of February for Power Fridays Live. And introducing Diana Page Jordan, who is a book coach, a writer, and media expert. Welcome, Diana. How are you this evening?
Oh, Janelle, thank you so much for inviting me on. I'm excited to be here. I'm absolutely thrilled, and I'm having an awesome day. Thanks. How about you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much. And I know that a legacy means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And love is what we are going to express this evening. And I know that you've had an opportunity to work with many people over the years. So I'm looking forward to taking everyone through this journey with you today as we explore, what you do and who you are and how you leave a legacy in this world.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And I always leave it up to you to share with us, who are you, Diana Page Jordan?
Oh my
Like,
God.
yeah, where did you grow up? And, how did you arrive at becoming a book coach and media expert?
Wow. I actually have two different ways of answering that. And first, I'll give you the official, and then I'll give you a little bit behind the scenes. I'm a New York City girl originally, grew up in the city and then into the suburbs. And I always had a passion for books. And what that led me to is wanting to know the truth. Like, what is the real truth of things, right? And I'll tell you the little secret behind the secret kind of thing is my 93-year-old mother recently said to me, she saw my books in the background and we were talking on Zoom, and she says, "Look at all those books." And I said, "Yes, Mom, I've interviewed thousands of authors and these are just some of the books." And she says, "When you were a little girl, you used to carry your books around with you like they were armor." Ooh, and they were my avenue to truth. They were my journey to know the best of the world and to be able to be connected with creativity and beautiful words and beautiful experiences. So it stemmed from that and led me to become a journalist. So I worked in radio, TV most of my life, and that was really fun. Loved being a news reporter and a news anchor and for radio and TV. And the side hustle was interviewing authors. And that was, oh my God, that was so amazing. It happened serendipitously, like a lot of the major fun things in my life. And it was just one of the other coworkers said to me one day, she goes, "I overbooked." She says, "I need you to interview this author." I'm like, "I haven't read the book." And she said, "Doesn't matter. It's an astrologer. You'll have no problem." And it started me off. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is it. This is my passion. So I've interviewed thousands of authors, many of them New York Times bestselling authors. And so I had the opportunity to really dig deep and to understand really what drives them, what creates a book, how do you write a book even, right? And so oftentimes they would say to me, "I've been on a 20-city book tour and nobody's ever asked me that before." Or they'll say, "You pulled that right out of me. How did you do that?" And a few years ago, I flipped it and I started helping people write their books. About 6 years ago, I started, I thought, well, what's a good word for it? So I just came up with book coach, and now it's like everywhere. But what I do is I use my inspirational, intuitive interviewing that I use with thousands of authors, and I help people I draw the book out of them so that they are, a lot of times you'll write a book, or just write anything, and you won't really see what's behind it, right? So I ask those questions and they go like, oh, and I go, well, what story do you have to go with that? And they go like, oh yeah, you know, and it just really opens everything up. It's really, really fun. And so some of the other things I did, for a decade, I was blessed to be in a writing group with Chuck Palahniuk, who wrote Fight Club and many other New York Times bestselling books. And Cheryl Strayed came in with the first few pages of her book that would become Wild, which was like super cool. She comes in, she says, you know, I've got like 3 magazines who want me to do a story about the trek up the Pacific Coast Trail. And she
Oh.
finishes reading her first few pages. And Cheryl, that's not a magazine article. That's a freaking book. And everybody's chiming in. That's a book. And so that's how that, you know, I'm sure she knew that in her heart of hearts, but it was
Yes.
phenomenal to be there and be on that journey all the way through her writing the book Wild that became so incredibly powerful. And she was great. So like I said, there are probably a dozen New York Times bestsellers that I contributed to over those years. Also, I worked in publicity. I had 2 worldwide publicity companies that asked me to work with their authors, so I did that. And so now we've got the interviewing side, we've got the publicity side, and we've got the writing side. And so I really know what goes into a book, and it's just really, it's really powerful journey. And the writing really pulls out. You talked about love before and legacy. You know, you end up writing things that just kind of download. They land on the page, and you go like, "Wow, I didn't really know that about myself." And it opens everything up, and you become more powerful, and you become more in love with your life, even if it hasn't been very easy or fun or whatever. You're able to extrapolate what worked and why you're on the path that you're on. So I really love working with entrepreneurs and healers and heroes. Yeah, it's a really fun journey.
Oh, great. Well, I'm so excited to hear about that. And I really am so thankful that you were able to be a contribution to the authors, because oftentimes, people, we're like talking and in our circle of friends, and you were intentional in having your circle and your writing club. And that is very important, as an entrepreneur, as we're looking at opportunities and ways. A lot of people do say, hey, I have a book in me. So,
Mhm.
what do you say to that person that says, I know I have a book in me, but I don't know. I just can't get it out. But I
Mm.
want to be an author, or I know I want to, have a book, but I just don't know.
Wow. Well, the fascinating thing is there are statistics out here. I was trying to chase that back and find out who actually did this study, but the facts remain that I don't know who originally did it. I looked everywhere, I couldn't find it. So maybe somebody else knows. But like 80% of people feel they have a book in them, and 3% finish the book. So
Wow.
I know. Yeah. So my commitment is to be there for for writers and help them all the way through, because you start up high, you're excited, you're going, and then there's kind of a leveling off and there's life, and and then you drop a little bit. That's where I come in, because I want to keep you engaged. And my process allows me, I do it on Zoom and use the interviewing. So what happens is we create each chapter like together on Zoom, and then part of the time we're looking at the chapter that was just done. So 48 hours, 24 to 48 hours before the session, you send in what you've written, even if it's like very little. And then we'll go through that, and then we expand on it, and we're building that chapter or the next chapter, whichever works best for you. And the idea is to keep you full of life and light and energy and wanting to finish that book and just staying in the path of it. So um, back toward the beginning of the process, I do a deep dive interview the very first time. And then out of that, I create an outline for the book. So when you're writing, you know where that stuff goes. And your unconscious mind is really clever, because it'll kick up the stuff that you want to write about. And you do the writing, and it lands much better if you have the structure and you know what you're talking about, and then you have the compatibility, the accountability, and the partnership with me, so I can help you stay on the path. So it's really a fascinating journey. It's really fun.
Oh, great. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Diana. And I know that with your various author interviews, you've landed on daily shows on the AP Radio Network's 800 station and on XM Radio. Do you also help people who you assist in becoming writers opportunities to be on media across the
Oh, yes.
United States?
Yes. Well, here's the interesting thing. The shows that I was on before, they XM merged with Sirius, and they no longer did it.
Oh,
BarnesandNoble.com. I had a daily show on well, not daily, a weekly show on their platform, and they got a new attorney, and they said, "Nope, we're going to own every iteration of every interview you do for us." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you, goodbye." Because I'm like,
oh,
I knew I wanted to write my memoir at some point, so I could not do that. And AP Radio Network News, with whom I was for a decade. They also, at that point, received a new leadership and they changed everything up. And so that show just disappeared. But it was called Between the Lines and it was so much fun. So I'm like, that's life. Sometimes things just kind of grind to a halt and then you want to create something new. And so I believe the positive side for me was to help people to flip it and help people write their books, not just be the interviewer, but to be part of the creation that brings something powerful and new into the world. And so many entrepreneurs, for example, they choose their fields because it's work that they've done with passion and they know how to do it. And oftentimes they want to, leave a legacy, as you were saying before, right? And so if you're an entrepreneur and you're thinking of writing a book, what I do is prescriptive nonfiction, which translates more easily to memoir blended with how to.
oh,
So lots of times I'll be talking with somebody and I'll go like, what story do you have? Right. I won't say it that way quite exactly, but the person sitting in front of me, the client, the entrepreneur, the healer, the hero will say, oh, I do remember this story, this client, or what happened to me when I was like 7 or something like that.
oh,
I'll give you
great.
an example. I was working with a healer and it was a Monday morning, and she looked a little tired, and she was always somebody who had plenty of energy. And I just got a hit, an intuitive hit, and I asked her, basically, how come you look so tired? I didn't put it quite that way, but anyway, she said,
Yeah.
"Oh my gosh." Her book was about when do you go to the doctor or when do you use like lavender and other, healing lotions and things like that, right? When do you run to the hospital? When do you just stay at home and do something in your bathroom, basically, right?
Yes.
Uh, yeah. So she says, oh my gosh, she says, I took my teenage daughters for a hike in the woods and they accidentally hit a beehive. And the bees came out
Oh,
and just stung them. They had bee stings all over them and they were running out. In the course of the running, the bees were chasing them. And it was just like, ah. So she illustrated her point perfectly with her story inadvertently. Obviously, she did not want to create something like that, but what ended up happening was she did administer like several of her potions and lavender and that kind of thing, and she took them to the hospital. So it was a really good with the ER. It was a really good illustration for what she was talking about. And like, who wouldn't know what to do when you had that kind of a situation then, right? So
right.
that's part of it. The stories, we're often told this, but the stories really uh, give us why we're part of this. Why am I interested in learning this? Or why am I interested in this book? Right. So when you are sharing your personal story with your readers, all
Yeah.
of a sudden it ignites and there's more power. And I coach on that too. For example, let's just say you're writing and you go, the man walked into the store. Okay.
Yes.
So that's pretty bland. Okay, so what did he look like? Was he tall? Was he short? Was he stumped over? Was he old? Was he carrying something? Was he dangerous looking? Did he have
Mm,
something in his pocket? Like, did he,
yes.
did he have a scent about him? All of a sudden you've got the beginning of a story.
Mm,
You're into that. You're using all the senses. And Chuck Palahniuk,
yes.
I mentioned a moment ago, Fight Club. He used to say in our writing group, which we call workshop, he said, it's called On the Body, right? Which was a technique of writings on the body.
Mhm.
It's just like, oh, so you want to bring all those senses in so that the reader gets the senses, even though they're looking at a page or hearing the audiobook, right? So it's really, really cool. It's a big world.
And fascinating as such, because that's one of the things I too was the person who, me and my sister and I should say, with for correct proper grammar. My mother would be listening to this, she's like, you're not using proper grammar. And so we would go to the library every year and have a little stars about how many books we read for the summer in a summer reading program. So I too, have a lot of books in my repertoire. And so, with the books that you have and that you own, and the authors that you've interviewed, Diana, have you ever thought about who gets those books?
Who gets the books?
Who
Who
gets
like
the books when
who
you want? Do you don't? People come and they're like, "Oh, this is you have two of these. Can I have one?" And I was like, "Sure, take it. I'll loan it to you, or you can bring it back. If you don't bring it back, I'm not worried about it." But for my book collection, because I have over 1,000 books personally. I want to donate my books to Books for Africa.
Oh, how wonderful.
Yes, so I'm
Yeah.
like, honey, keep what you want, but ship these books to the Books for Africa program,
Oh,
upon my passing. So then the legacy of my books are going to be, end up in Africa somewhere.
oh, that's so beautiful. Yeah.
Yes.
About a decade ago, I'm in the Portland, Oregon area now, and I moved from here back to New York for 3 years. And when I did, I moved from my home. So I donated thousands of books to the local library, which was kind of cool. But it was
Oh,
also kind of like,
wow.
oh my gosh, they're cool, all my books. But I had so many books. And the ones that I kept are the ones that are signed, and I keep them for a while. It was really funny. The very beginning when I first started interviewing authors, I kept them pristine, right? I'd read them, but I'd read them like almost like not cracking the spine because I loved the book so much. And
Yes, with
then
white gloves.
yes, exactly. And so I didn't have them sign their books or anything. And then after a while, I'm going like, oh, why am I not having them sign these books? And so now I have a lot of the signed books, and they're really phenomenal. And it's really generous what some of the authors have written, which is pretty cool. So I don't know. It's a lovely and unexpected journey, that this and I'm going to tell you a story about this, how it
Yes.
started. So I talked my conservative local radio station into letting me and interview authors for a weekly show. It's about 3.5 minutes long radio show. And they go, do it on your own time. I'm like, okay, works for me. So it was really cool. I built up a small reputation, I'd say. And then one day I was interviewing Richard Carlson, who wrote the books Don't Sweat the Small Stuff. And
Oh, I
yeah,
have that. Yes.
yeah, yeah, he was amazing, and, I had this intuitive sense to ask him a question after the interview was done, and we were kinda packing up, and I didn't really know what the question was, but I said, "Richard, I'm supposed to ask you this question, I don't really know what it is." He goes, "Okay, let's just hang out, till it comes in," and then suddenly it landed, and I'm, like, going, "Okay, Richard, do you know how I could make this book show national?" And it just kinda came out of my
Mhm.
mouth. He goes, "Oh." I go, "What?" He says, "Can I use your phone?" I'm like, "Okay." So he goes I go point through the glass of the radio station studio, right? So he goes out, and I can see him, moving his hands and everything, his back's to me, and he comes back in, he says, "Are you sitting down?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sitting down." And he goes, "Well, I just called the Associated Press Radio Network, and the guy who's been doing Between the Lines for a few years, he just gave notice. So they need somebody like now." And so it was instant. It was just instant. Yeah.
Wow, that is a great story. That's amazing. And that's how it works,
Yes.
that through people and through asking.
Yeah. It's also paying attention to that beautiful voice that we all have, the kind one, the
Yes.
intuitive, yeah, the intuitive voice. And to also um the relationships we have are so important. I think that was probably maybe the third or fourth time I'd interviewed Richard, and he was just always so kind and delightful. And um yeah, and so that helped too, you know. Mm,
Yes.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So
Relationships are very important. As an entrepreneur and as a leader and as an influencer as yourself, having the relationships that you have, just build upon your career in that way.
Yes, and I feel like it's generous all around, right? Because, for example, um, we can all help each other in some sweet small way or a big way. It's just it sort of develops, and I feel like when we're listening to what is the good that I can create in this space, what is the I use kind curiosity.
Yes.
I kind of coined that a few years ago. I'm like, oh, and when I'm in that kind space and I'm being curious, obviously it works with interviews because they're expecting that, but in personal relationships and even with people I don't really know, like I'm walking down the street or something, they get that I care. And so all of a sudden you've got like a new friend, right? So I walk and dance every day. Ever since COVID closed my gym, like 3 years ago, I danced every day and I walk 3 plus miles every day. And so now it's like 1,400 and some odd days in a row. And one of the things I do is when I'm walking, I catch the eye of little children and just smile with my heart open because you never know what's going on in a child's life. And I just want them to know that there is love in the world. And yeah, because they'll remember. They'll remember. If they're having a hard day or something, they'll remember. It'll make a difference.
Yes, and now in this day and time, we definitely need more people, reaching out to the young people in these days,
Mm.
because we never know what a person is dealing with, a young person or even an adult in that fashion, and just you smiling to them, walking down the street, and that makes a total difference. And smile throughout the day, and I too, Diana, make it a point whenever I'm checking out in the grocery store, and if someone's looking a certain way, you kind of feel their energy,
Yeah.
and I compliment them,
Mm. That's really
and
sweet.
it does make a difference.
Yeah, and
Um,
in books yeah, and in books too, when you're writing your books, that is a quiet, private way to interact with that generosity too. Like,
oh,
for example, when you are especially if you're a healer or I like to say hero too, because I feel like there's always that energy that we have access to of being a hero in the world, right? And then entrepreneurs. And what I feel like is super important is the ability to open your heart on the page so that people get who you are. And beyond that, they get who they can be, you know?
oh, yes. A lot of books do inspire me, and that's what they're meant to do. Yes.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I love this. They call it prescriptive nonfiction. I mentioned it earlier. And
Hmm.
actually that was a fairly new term for me. I hadn't heard that term up until fairly recently. I'm like, wow. But it's very common in a way. Most of the people that I enjoyed interviewing, well, I shouldn't say it that way because I've got a bookshelves full of thrillers and all kinds of great books here. But I loved when people who were experts were able to speak beyond that and tell their own personal stories as well as stories of their clients. And that's why I've been drawn to this kind of writing. I feel like it's super important for people to have that opportunity to tell their stories in a book form and make it really come across. And so they can contribute their legacy. And it's more than legacy, it's more like it's a soft, sweet place to be. Like if you're reading late at night and maybe you haven't had the best day or something, you're reading somebody's book and you go like, okay, you're traveling away, and you take something away too, like something new, something powerful and positive.
Oh, great. Well, that's very good to learn a prescriptive nonfiction because I too am an author and I wrote a book called Money Just Flew Out the Window: How to Create a Relationship with Wealth Living from Paycheck to Paycheck.
Mm,
And I didn't know until I got into the book because I wanted to share my story and like my money story. It's like
mm,
that moment in time that has me save money or not save money, and it's like explain this. It's like my dad would say, early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. And he's like, you got to go to bed early so that you can, be wealthy. Okay. So I'm like, well, what does that really mean? And my mother would always say, don't take any wooden nickels. So I wrote this book and I had no idea.
okay.
talking about. And I was like, so whenever I was set out to write the book, those were the two main the ideas that I had. And it turns out that they were coined money idiom.
Oh,
And
very
I did not know that when started. And
huh.
all the things that people say about money, then I
Yeah.
wanted to explain why we said the things and, money doesn't grow on trees and money is the root of all evil and all of that. So I like wrote my book and explained all of those fun things and shared the story behind, my mother saying, well, to almost slap me when I said money doesn't grow on trees. But mom, I learned today that paper is made
Oh,
from
that's cute.
trees.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute. So where did that term come from? Money doesn't grow on trees.
I right now to in this moment, I don't know where it came from, the term, but I just explained why people say it.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And but then the origination of the coin and the origination of a money and the barter system, I started out in that way.
Wow.
With my book to say, okay, how did we come about the form of the money as a tool? And that's what I did. But yeah, the money doesn't grow on trees. I don't know who created it in the beginning, but I know it's widely used, and that was the research that I didn't do, Diana. So part two, I'll probably lead up and, and get the answer to that question.
Well, I love that whole subject area. That's so fascinating. That's really great. And I wanted to roll back to something you asked me earlier, and it was basically how people can get their books out there. And what when I was working as a publicist, um, let me put it this way: there are all different kinds of writing, obviously, right? And you have a different kind of voice for this kind of writing, different kind of voice for that kind of writing. Well, with publicity, one of the key things that you want to do is look at what's going on in the world today, right? So you look at the headlines, you look at what's going on, and then well, I would write news releases based around that, so that the news release would instantly get the attention of a reporter or a producer to even look, to even read the copy that's written there, so that somebody's book has been written about, well, let's just say money. Okay. So then the first thing that comes to mind is, oh, interest rates. Okay. So you can tie it to interest rates and build the story out that way, and some advice from the author about interest rates. So then a reporter would be likely to go like, oh, they see the headline and then they go like, oh, this person's an expert. Okay. Well, let me see if I can get this person on. So that's a very quick, off the top of my head example of how you can get the attention of people who will put you on the air.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for sharing that tidbit and the golden nugget of how publicity works. And Diana, we do have a few people listening. I'm not sure if they have any questions or put anything in the chat just yet, but I do thank you so much for your time today. This has been a great conversation, getting to know you better and your journalistic experience and your writing experience and your interviewing experience. I feel like, oh my gosh, she should be interviewing me. I was like, oh, I can't wait. And so I'm very excited to have you with us tonight on Power Fridays Live. And can you share with us a little bit about how to reach you? And I do have your website here to put across the bottom. And for anyone who wants to reach out to you for coaching, for a book, media, all of that,
Well, thank
then.
you. Oh, Janelle, thank you so much. That's so sweet of you. So my name, this is actually my birth name, which is cool because it legally changed 5 times since between then and now, but I took it back and it's, and so it's, the spelling trips people up though. So it's Diana like the princess, Paige like in a book, Jordan like Michael. I had this literary agent once who said, "Why are you not using your middle name when it's Paige and it's even spelled right?" I'm like, oh,
Yes.
yes. So it's in there. Yeah.
Okay, good. I was going to ask you about that too, and I'm so glad you shared this story because I was like, I wonder if that's her real name or if it's just what she does and just a take on that. So
No,
thank you
it's
so much. So
real.
that's your birth name.
Yeah,
Your
thank you. Yeah, I'm on
uh,
Facebook and Instagram and a few others. Oh, LinkedIn. That's my favorite right now. So
okay,
if you want to
okay,
catch me there too. Yeah.
okay. Facebook, Instagram,
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
Yes. Yes.
All Diana Page Jordan, the book media expert, the media maven. I like to call
I
you.
I like that. I saw that you created that. Thank you so much, Janelle.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. And it's been such a pleasure to have this conversation with you this evening, Diana. And as I share with everyone, be, do, and have the greatness that you desire because the greatness is in you. And Diana, you are that person to bring the greatness out in people. And I want to say thank you for that.
Oh, thank you, Janelle. Thank you for a blessed adventure here. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. And we are now coming to a close. So, all of the people who will watch the replay, if you have any questions or any information for Diana Page Jordan, please do leave it in the comments. We'll get back to you. And if you can reach out to Diana directly at dianapagejordan.com and learn more about the services that she has to offer. And she will open herself up to you and make herself available to answer any questions that you may have about becoming an author, a writer, and or if you need some publicity for a book that you've already written, you will help as well.
Thank you so much, Janelle. I really appreciate you and the time here. And I want to add one last quick thing. My
Yes.
email address is dianapagejordan@gmail.com. So that will help
Okay.
you if you're interested. And thank you so much for the work that you do. It's awesome.
Oh, you're very welcome. And thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you for being a yes tonight. I know that you could have been anywhere in the world on a Friday night. And we thank you so much for being here. And please do watch the replay on YouTube and Facebook of Power Fridays Live. This is the Legacy of Love series with book coach, writer, media expert, my media maven, Diana Page Jordan. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to Power Fridays Live. We'll see you next week and have a wonderful weekend. Thanks so much and have a blessed day. Bye bye. Thank you, Diana.